waking up with headaches, dreading going to work, a mountain of student loan debt for a career she no longer loved. Sound familiar? Lindsay was a psychiatric nurse practitioner who knew she couldn't continue down the path she was on. Now, 8 months after she's joined the collective, she has an amazing client she loves in a completely new industry. She's recouped her costs of the collective and has gone down a personal growth journey that has brought self-compassion to the forefront. I cannot wait for you to meet Lindsay. Let's dive in. Lindsay, I am so excited to hear parts of your story today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me to do this.
So let's go back pre-grant writing, which was not that long ago, only 8 months. What drew you to this new field of grant writing?
I was a nurse for 4 years or so, and then I went back to school, got my master's, and started practicing as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I was seeing patients in the clinic back to back to back, which usually meant 15 to 20 patients per day. I just was exhausted, especially with COVID and the pandemic. I think everybody got exhausted, but it was very emotionally draining to be in that field at the time. So I just realized I could not keep doing this. I was waking up every morning with like headaches. I was in a bad mood. My partner was asking me, how do we make this better? We can't keep doing this. Once I paid off the student loans, I realized now's the time to transition to something else, but didn't want to go back to school and incur more debt. So I stumbled upon grant writing as a great way to do that. And that's when I kind of decided to join the collective and learn those skills.
You were like, I know what leading indicator is going to be. When that happens, then we get to start go. I also really appreciate when partners can recognize in that too, because often then that leads to so much more support when we go into that next phase, because they know how down in the trenches that you are. You get helps in the transition to something new. When you joined, what was your definition of success?
I went into this with a relatively low bar for success, which was I just want to make enough money to actually cover the cost of the collective. Nice. And I've been able to do that, even just doing this part-time. So success accomplished.
And only 8 months in, so it's perfect. We got 4 more months. Most people who enter a new career will often pull their background with them. You didn't do that. You bit off a huge chunk of learning the new skill of grant writing on top of doing it with a new niche industry. And so talk to me about your client load and what that looks like in terms of this new industry that you've picked.
I had a friend mentor me for a little bit in the field of grant writing and fundraising here locally before I joined the collective. And she actually encouraged me to reach out to healthcare nonprofits. My stomach would just churn every time I think about it. I was like, I just don't want to go back into the field. In hindsight, as I've been along this journey, I'm like, I can see why she was encouraging me to do that. There's a lot to learn in the technical skills of grant research and grant writing, in addition to this whole other field. So you make a really good point there. I've been happy to take my time with this and learn slowly and just one step at a time and not rush myself too much. In terms of my current client load, I just have one client. I have a second one who may pop up later this year. I feel good about the workload.
What you picked was more environmental resource efficiency. I would love to know more about the client that you're serving, because they sound so cool and also in alignment with some things that we're doing in Central Oregon. But I would love to promote them and talk about the work that you're doing with them.
The current client I'm working with is Bellingham Sea Feast. They are a nonprofit who works to intentionally connect the public with our local maritime and fishing industries to kind of highlight the coastal culture and really showcase the economic impact that the maritime trades have locally and regionally for our community. The organization itself started out as just a really big seafood festival back in 2016. And over the last 2 years, the current executive director has really been busting his butt to kind of blow up the year-round programming, and the festival's much bigger. We're getting more and more attendees every year. It's been exciting to be a part of that growth too.
I'm on the board of a nonprofit that supports all of our local farmers. It just opened my eyes to the fact that we don't honor where our food comes from in the country. Like, I've known that for a while, but working 100%. With the farmers, it's just ingrained now. And I think the same thing for the fisher people. It's so cool that you get to support the people that put food on our plates.
It's really opened my eyes just to see how, like, the really large commercial fishing have unsustainable practices or really unethical practices. And yes, it really undercuts your neighbor who's the commercial fisherman.
Was it challenging to get this one client? How are you making this so that it works to be your only client client part-time and that you're earning money?
I'll be the first to acknowledge I'm very lucky. I have support from my husband right now, but I found this client through a friend of mine in town. Bellingham is still a relatively small community. I did a handful of informational interviews. I had been volunteering with a handful of environmental nonprofits, just volunteering my time with beach cleanups and water sampling, and not necessarily volunteering as a grant writer. I was just talking to people through those connections, and eventually, really in a short period of time, came across Bellingham Sea Feast. And since the executive director is the only full-time employee, he was like, yeah, I need help grant writing. Start yesterday.
I love it. It's a great way to make the connections and leads to so many curious conversations, right? You're like even talking to the person next to you who's cleaning the beach, and like, who knows what that person is doing?
Exactly. That is one thing I've really enjoyed pivoting out of healthcare and into the nonprofit world, is you meet so many people who are there not for the money, but because they're excited, because they're passionate, they really are interested, and they're really looking to make things better.
I agree completely. You've made this sound very easeful, which is incredible. That is the vibe that we want to go for, is really expanding with ease. You're leaning into one of our values. And I know that it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows. So I would love to hear about one of the challenging moments you faced.
There's a lot of days of talking positively to myself to build up, like, okay, you can do it. You can do it today. A couple weeks ago, I got news from two different funders in the same week that we were declined or we were denied grant funding. And it just doesn't feel good to have to tell your client that. And, you put all this time and work into stuff. And the reality is you can put your best work forward and still hear no. And it doesn't mean you're a failure. That's just life sometimes.
I remember when you posted in Circle, because all of the comments underneath were like, I've been there, I've been there, I've been there.
Yeah, which was encouraging, because at the time you're like, oh no, like I'm a fraud. What am I doing? I can't believe I'm charging people to do this.
You're new. You're probably new with the executive director too, and you hear these two bad news. How did you tell him, and what was the conversation like when you worked through that, both personally yourself, but then also with him, to make sure that both of you could move forward positively?
I just contacted him and let him know right away that we were denied grant funding. I also told him that I had emails out to both funders just to get a little more information. And once I got more info as to why we were not selected, I shared that with him as well. And he was a lot easier on me than I was on myself, and was very positive and just said, that's okay, we'll on to the next one.
You're so right that often we are the hardest person on ourselves. I will say that that attitude often allows the client to be like, wow, they're taking this really seriously. And so I'm sure he saw that and was like, wow, Lindsay showed up for me.
I hope that's the message he's getting. Yeah.
I love the next steps of reaching out to the funders and getting more information, because one, it could lead to a pivot and money next year, or you just don't have to waste your time with that funder the next year when it comes up. But what I also love about it from a consultant angle is that it allows you to come to the table with also that next step, so that it's not just like we lost it and I have no idea what to do next. Like it's I lost it and these are the things that I'm doing to help us next time.
That part's not always easy to do. For me, I get rejected. I'm like, I don't want to lean into that, but it's important to know to inform your next steps.
What are you most proud of? You have done a lot in these 8 months.
Is just pivoting out of something that I was unhappy in and showing up for myself to learn something new. I also think that one of the most valuable parts of this journey has been the personal growth that has come with it. Of course, there's the technical skills of grant research, grant writing, dealing with clients, dealing with funders. But the personal growth for me has been more about, how do I respond to myself when I'm struggling, when I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, when I feel like I'm failing, or failure is a very real threat, and learning to be kinder to myself and kind of practice some self-compassion. That has been a really valuable aspect of this whole journey.
Your definition of success was like, yeah, I'm going to earn that money. And you did that. And along the way, I assume that your definition of success also changed. Like, how do I show compassion when I am having a hard time? That's a definition of success that we don't even know how to set forward until we're in the journey. Do you have any tools? Like, is there a favorite thing you lean on when you're like, oh man, I'm being pretty mean to myself? Like, where's the compassion?
Having a background in mental health, I think, helps. And I will say one tool that I've been leaning on a lot recently, I'm currently working my way through it, is the Self-Compassion Workbook by Kristen Neff. She and one other person have a whole website dedicated to this. I should have looked it up. But the workbook is on Amazon, and it's a great tool to just learn piece by piece. Why should we be nice to ourselves? How do we practice that daily? And in all these different forms, writing exercises, meditations, just a lot of different tools to use for different people.
I love that. That's a new tool for me. And we will link that in the description because it will help us no matter what we're going through. Well, I'm really proud of you for leaning into that self-compassion. I think it's a really hard thing to do.
It's simple, but it's very difficult.
We're going to end with some rapid fire questions. What is one word to describe your dream lifestyle?
Balanced.
Next vacation spot?
We're going to Japan for a very belated honeymoon.
Favorite podcast?
I don't listen to many podcasts, but on any given day, I'll have an FKJ playlist going. And I've also been on a kick of Sophie Tucker lately.
What are you reading right now?
No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh, also a good resource for self-compassion. And The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin.
Last TV show you binged?
Shogun.
And what is your superpower?
I can fall asleep really quickly. Yeah.
Very good superpower. Seemingly from the outside, the ease that you've brought to your journey, it's really quite beautiful. And so as you think about how you want your life to continue to unfold in this journey, what comes to mind? Paint us that picture of what your next 3 to 6 months might look like.
Thank you for telling me it looks like I've done this with ease, because it has not felt that way. The next 3 to 6 months, I just want to continue this momentum. I want to keep taking one step at a time and not holding too tightly an idea of success that is earning a particular amount or working with a particular number of clients. I just want to keep moving along this path and kind of going where it leads rather than needing to direct it so hard in one place.
It is incredibly rewarding to do the work of looking at life that way. And I will say it's not always the most easy path. I'm again really proud of you for leading this journey with your values first and then letting everything else come after.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I am thrilled that you're doing this work in Washington with very cool people to have an impact on this earth that we love so much and we need. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your story with us.
Thank you. I appreciate the interest.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye.